Welcome back, fight fans. We're back again. We're going to be talking about, of course, UFC Vegas 51 and this week's UFC Vegas 52, of course. And that's about it. So we'll jump right into it. So we're going to start off, as always, with last week's card. Just moving stuff around. I really should have done that before. We're going to be talking about, opening up with UFC Vegas 51. That was Belal Muhammad, Vicente Luque. So we're going to start off right at the start of it with the first prelim, which is actually one of the ones that I was talking about last week. That was Alatang Haley, Kevin Kroom. Going into it, I was pretty sure we were going to see Alatang take the win here, as most other people kind of thought too. But I thought it was going to be fairly close. I thought Alatang was going to get the decision because, Kevin Kroom started off at lightweight, then moved down to bantamweight. Lightweight, then down to featherweight. Then, of course, this one was being fought at bantamweight. So I thought it was going to be a little closer. And then, of course, Kevin Kroom also had a huge 6-inch reach advantage, which is pretty substantial. So all of that together, I thought it was going to be a bit of a coin toss. And I thought Kevin Kroom was going to be, he's pretty tough. So I thought he was going to make it at least into the second or third round there. But he didn't. I mean, it was crazy. Alatang just, I wouldn't say he shocked anybody, but he definitely did way better than I thought he was going to do. The reach difference was pretty obvious, and it took Alatang a little bit to get that going, to get the distance right, avoiding Kroom's jabs. But as soon as he found it, that was it. That was it. He landed a huge overhand right, rocked Kroom, had him stumbling all over the place, hit him a couple more times, and that was it. Alatang got the TKO in the very first round, which started off a big night of wins for us, by the way. 12 out of 14 I got right. And out of the ones that I told you guys about, I think it was maybe 9-1. I can't remember. I can't remember what we even got here. It's at the bottom of this. I'll tell you later. The second one, Sam Hughes, Estela Nunez. This one I actually, on Tapology, as I've mentioned so many times, I have the Tapology account. I put all of my predictions into there. This was one that actually was favoring Nunez, and I put it in one of the parlays because she was a fairly heavy favorite. Nothing crazy. I think she was minus 200 something. It's still enough to be like, okay. But she ended up on the wrong side of it here. And this is why I did not mention this prelim last week, because going into it, I was like, I think this could go either way on this one. And Sam Hughes ended up getting a majority decision here. Very, very close. Right from the first minute, the striking advantage very clearly for Nunez. And that's why people were picking her, actually, because of her stand-up game. She got some good combos, some good kicks, busted up Hughes early. And really a couple minutes into the fight, there was already some damage showing. So, right away, it was like, okay, maybe Nunez is as good as we thought, and she deserved to be the favorite here. And I think she probably did. But, the dominant striking display really continued the entire opening round. In fact, really, it looked as though Hughes had already been through 3 rounds of fighting, whereas Nunez barely looked like she had even fought. But as the fight continued, Hughes' game plan was clearly to clinch up with Nunez and then take her down. She managed to get in a few moments along the fence, but Nunez did a pretty good job actually keeping the fight at a distance. She kept it that way until about a minute left in the second, and that's where Hughes finally got a takedown and probably stole that round. After that, though, that's when Hughes really took over the fight. The final round, completely different story. Nunez started to maybe get a little bit tired, made more mistakes in there. The biggest mistake ended up being another eye poke that actually lost her a point on the judges' cards and really that's basically, you can't do that, that's especially in a close fight like that. Even if she was winning, that already brings it down probably to a draw. So that really sealed it. And after that, she didn't really seem all that into it anymore. She didn't even really try too much to get up as Hughes was taking her down. And then it was just kind of all over from there. So I had it 29-27 for Hughes. Of course, the point deduction brings it down to a 27 on that. But the judges agreed. Two of them had it 29-27. So they already had Hughes with the win, just like me. But one of them did have it 28-28, which is what I was getting at. Like, that eye poke, I mean, that's a wrap, really. I mean, the best really she could have done at that point was getting 28-28. So just unfortunate there. Yeah, but you know what? Hughes looked really good. I think people counted her out a little too early there. The next one, Jordan Levitt, Trey Ogden. This was one of the the underdogs that I had going into it. I told a lot of people about it. I said, Jordan Levitt, I don't know why really he was the underdog going into this. I didn't talk about it last week, but I did mention it in passing. And I did mention it, of course, on Tapology, of course, and a little bit on Twitter, I believe. I also may have mentioned it too. I'm not quite sure. The fight started off pretty slow, sticking to a fight on the feet as all fights start, of course. Ogden was doing a pretty good job pressuring Levitt on the feet, but got pretty unlucky. He slipped, landed on his back, and then Levitt just jumped right on top of him. I mean, that's a wrap on that round. That's it. Yeah. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. So, yeah, then Levitt ended up on top. But Ogden actually almost managed to switch it around, though. He slipped in a deep, like really deep guillotine attempt that actually I was like, I think Levitt just lost here. That was pretty much it for that. But he still managed to get out of it. The second round, pretty similar, pretty back and forth. A lot of leg kicks for Levitt. And really, at that point, no idea what was happening on the judges' cards. I mean, it was all over the place. It was back and forth both rounds at that point. I mean, nobody could really tell at that point what was happening. The third round, we finally saw the wrestling match that they seemingly both wanted. Ogden landed on top more than once in the first half of the round. And it was at that point that Ogden seemed to be getting tired, though. Levitt took advantage of that, got on top of Ogden, and then spent the entire second half of the round on top. I mean, at that point, to me, that was 2-1 for Levitt. Obviously, what was it? The first one? No. Yeah, the first one because he was on top the whole round. The second one, it was pretty tough to tell. But I thought probably Ogden on that one. And then, of course, Levitt with the last round, given all the control time. So I had it 2-1. But the first 2 rounds were very, very close. So who knew what the judges were going to say? And they ended up being split in what they saw, 29-28, 28-29, and 29-28 for the underdog, my pick, Jordan Levitt on that one. So that was another underdog we got for the night. We're doing really good with these underdogs. I'm pretty happy with these, honestly. Okay, the next one, another prelim that I had talked about, the second one that I had talked about last week. That was Chris Barnett, Martin Buday. I was going into this saying Buday by finish because I mean, I don't remember why. I think he basically just had a lot of finishes going into it. And I wasn't really all that impressed with what I saw from Barnett. I mean, yeah, he got the spinning wheel kick KO, which was incredible. But, John Vellante looked horrible in that fight. So, I was kind of like, I wouldn't say that he got lucky, but he definitely got luckier than most people getting that version of John Vellante for sure. Plus, I think it was also because Buday was looking good on the ground, and Barnett isn't really that kind of a fighter. So, yeah, so I had Buday by finish. I mean, started off pretty quick, had some big offense coming from both sides in the first round. Neither guy was really landing anything huge, but Buday seemed to be ahead because he got some clinch control and he was walking forward the whole time. So, I mean, that forward pressure, the judges see that, they give that round on the cards, as I would as well. I mean, when somebody's moving forward the whole time and everything else is really close, looks better from that perspective. The second round kept going exactly the same way. Buday smothering Barnett along the fence, shutting any kind of offense really down that he had. Going into the final round, Barnett actually mentioned that he probably broke his rib from some elbows from Buday. Amazing from Buday. Knowing that he had done some big damage, Buday kept kneeing and elbowing the ribs, just really laying it on Barnett. But sadly, the fight ended in a very strange way, but not strange for the night because we'll be seeing it actually happen another couple times. But he landed an illegal blow to the back of the head. It was an elbow going down. Not good. Sadly, the doctor had to step in and they ended the fight. But because it was accidental, and I think it was accidental too. I mean, he obviously wasn't trying to land an elbow like that in that exact spot. The fight actually ended in a technical decision, ended in the third round, which meant that they went to the cards. And because, of course, Buday was doing so well, very easy to judge, 30-27 on the cards there. But, that sparked a whole argument online and in the analyst group because it's the color commentators, everybody at the desk, basically. Because, what does that mean exactly that it was accidental? It's tough to say. And it is a lot of gray area. People have always been saying that too, and they said it a lot on Saturday. Because, I'm about to say, it did happen more than once. It happened twice that we saw technical decisions, and we actually saw another illegal blow in a different fight that did not end the fight, but it was very close to. So, what do you do in that point? I mean, and they were comparing it to the Jan one where he landed the knee on Aljo, of course. So what do you do with that? Personally, I mean, Jan was so blatantly on purpose. And he specifically, the corners told him to do it. He was very clearly going to do it. Just everything pointed to that being very clearly intentional. Whereas this, Barnett even seemed like he was moving, like he had moved so that when, Buday was throwing the elbow, he was in a different spot. So he basically moved into the elbow. And, you can tell that Buday wasn't like, I'm going to elbow the back of his head on purpose now. No, he was trying to elbow the side. Barnett moved, and that's it. So, I mean, personally, that's a cut and dry, that's clearly not on purpose. So that one made sense. And we'll talk the same kind of reasoning into the next one too when we get there. Forewarning. That's what we're going to be talking about in that next one too. So, next fight, Rafa Garcia, Jesse Ronson. Right away, pretty clear we were about to see a pretty big brawl. It was pretty close, but Garcia seemed to be edging ahead thanks to some extra combos, bigger shots, and some nice takedowns. The second round opened up with another takedown from Garcia, but that's when we saw the second illegal strike of the night. The doctor was brought in. Interestingly, even though it was pretty close, I gotta say, it was pretty close to being legal. It was a bit iffy. The ref chose to deduct a point away from Garcia. Very interesting, especially since we did not see a point taken away in the Buday fight, which that probably should have been done, I will say, because at that point, if the fight were to have continued, you're probably seeing a very diminished fighter. So taking a point probably would have made sense. What was I going to say? But yeah, for this one, a point taken away. I mean, it kind of made sense depending on how you looked at it, I guess. In response to that, though, Garcia picked up the wrestling again, got a takedown. I mean, when you lose a point like that, no matter what's happening in the fight, it's going to be close and you got to really turn up the heat at that point. And that's exactly what Garcia did. Like I said, he got that wrestling going, got the takedown, kept Ronson down there, smothered him, threatening him with submissions. And just as we thought we were going to be seeing a final round, Garcia took Ronson's back, snuck in another submission, and took the fight away from the judges, away from the points and all that, got the finish in there. The next one, Dracar close, Brandon Jenkins. I did not talk about this prelim last week, but I did mention the fact that close was such a huge favorite. I think it was something like minus 700 or something like that. So I had mentioned it in that context that you could definitely put him in a parlay, of course, because of the wild odds on that and the fact that he looked so good going into this in comparison. So coming in the biggest favorite on the card, Close was quick to show why he deserved that distinction. I mean, he was landing some crazy body strikes, huge like elbows and knees in the clinch. You don't normally see stuff like that in the clinch that's that devastating. Jenkins stumbling backwards for almost a minute straight. I mean, it was crazy to watch. It was like, are they going to finish this? Like, what's happening here? Close took a bit of a break after that, recompose himself because he was probably getting tired from beating the shit out of Jenkins. Dropped him again with another huge shot and swarmed him amazingly. I don't know how. Ronson got out of it and made it into the next round, but didn't matter. I mean, the dominance continued right away. Close through some knees and some uppercuts, dropped Jenkins again, and the ref, of course, was forced to jump in and stop it in the second round. The next one, another prelim that I had talked about last week. It was Lena Landsberg, Pani Kianzad. I had Kianzad by decision going into this. I mean, of course, it was by decision because you're talking about two as well. I don't want to say they're older, but they're nearing the end of their career. So statistically speaking, even with the men, when you're seeing older guys, you usually see a lot of decisions. But we're talking about women who, of course, are statistically more likely to go to decisions. So all of that combined, of course, we were seeing a decision here. What was I gonna say here? I went with Kianzad because she's 10 years younger, had the slightly more impressive win. So I knew it was going to be close, but I had it for Kianzad. Even though I will say the odds were very one-sided going into this. And I even warned people last week. I was like, you can definitely throw this in a parlay, of course, but this could be one that maybe breaks the parlay because it is very, very close. So in spite of what the odds were saying, Landsberg did look great in the opening round. She led with the momentum early thanks to some clinching and some good strikes. As the round went on, though, Kianzad started to chip away at that momentum, took Lena down and took her back. And the next round started off the same way. Landsberg got that early momentum with a little bit of clinch work, but didn't really look all that great, really, because Kianzad actually busted her open. So visually speaking, did not really look that good for Landsberg. And then really just like the first round, Kianzad started to take over, got some control time of her own. But the biggest moment of the fight up until that point, and actually really the fight in general, was actually when the elbow queen, Lena Landsberg, dropped Pani with a massive, massive elbow. Thanks to that elbow and the clinch control, it was still pretty close. So I had it 1-1. Kianzad winning the opening round, and of course Landsberg stealing that second round with that massive elbow and the knockdown. The final round, I mean, that's where it really opened up. Both women pushing their pace on the feet, of course, because they're both experienced. They know it's close. They know it's a close fight. So, of course, they really brought it in. Both brought it into the last round. And honestly, I couldn't really tell who was kind of going ahead, but I thought maybe just because of maybe a little bit of extra offense, Kianzad probably won 29-28. And the judges ended up agreeing, all having it 29-28. So what do we see from these two going forward? Because, of course, we always talk about what's next, especially for the ranked people, which these two very much were. It seems pretty obvious, really, that neither one of these women could really continue and compete against anybody in the top 5. So what do we see from here for that? For Kianzad, somebody on their way down would make the most sense. I kind of think that Aspen Ladd would be the perfect candidate for that scenario. I mean, Ladd is coming off a couple of losses. Kianzad needs to be tested against somebody slightly more skilled and powerful. So that makes sense. That's a good matchup for me. Landsberg, on the other hand, I hate to say it. You always hate to see that. But I think she was like 38 or 39, maybe 40. I can't remember. So, I mean, she's very clearly near the end of her career, sadly. So I'm thinking we need to see her in a fight against maybe another veteran, something interesting that leads her into retirement. Personally, I think somebody like Miesha Tate would make a lot of sense. I mean, Miesha Tate also kind of needs somebody to get back into it with. Why not do Landsberg? Like I said, it's an interesting fight. Two people that have been around for a long time. And then win or loss, I would say Landsberg maybe should kind of transition out of the UFC after that. But that would be quite the send-off, I really do think, against Miesha Tate. I think that would be very interesting for everybody to see. And it's a nice way to end a career. I mean, that's a big name to end your career with. I like it. The final prelim of the night, and it was one that we had talked about last week. The final prelim that I had talked about last week. The fourth one, my goodness, was Devin Clark, William Knight. And this one was very, very interesting going into it because instead of going at light heavyweight, which is where both of them normally fight, they moved up to heavyweight, which makes sense because, I mean, I've said it before. I have no idea how Knight even makes it down to 205 because this guy is massive. And I had Clark going by decision going into this because I just figured since Clark is way more experienced, he's ranked at light heavyweight, I figured he would use that experience, use a lot of clinch work and all that to get the decision going to beat William Knight here. But with all that power coming back at him, because, I mean, you knew Clark wasn't going to really be that big as a heavyweight. It really could have gone either way. You could have seen Knight get a massive KO in. You could have seen it either way here. But I went with the more reliable pick here with Clark. The fight started off pretty slow. Oh, by the way, going into this fight, I believe Clark ended up weighing in at around 220-ish. And William Knight was about 250 pounds. So, and he looked pretty much normal like that. So, I mean, that really just tells you how big he was at light heavyweight to somehow make it down to 205. Mind-blowing. Absolutely mind-blowing. So, started off slow, but it got pretty interesting after Clark shot in for a takedown and got stuck in a pretty deep guillotine from Knight. And I mean, with those massive, massive arms, I mean, Knight might not have the skills to back it up, but I mean, when you're that big, that strong, I mean, getting in a guillotine like that's going to be pretty rough. For a full minute straight, he had that guillotine going, but then he let go and exploded with a huge, huge flying knee and a wild flurry of strikes. At that point, honestly, it was looking pretty questionable for Clark, but he got out of it and he ended up in the dominant position along the fence at the end of the round. I mean, after all that, you got to think Knight probably edged ahead on the round, but it was honestly still pretty close. The question that really needed to be asked after all that, though, is when you've got somebody that big, because remember, Knight really isn't all that tall. I think he was like 5'9" or something, 5'10". So he's not really that tall. So to be 250 pounds of like pure muscle and you did a guillotine for a minute straight, you probably blew some stamina right there. And of course, all the wild striking in there. So that was really the question, is did he blow all of his stamina going into the second round? The second round, very slow to start as well, but finally picked up with some action from Clark, landed a big hook and dragged Knight down to the ground, smothered him for 3 minutes straight down there, just like before. So obviously I thought it was 1-1 going into the final round there. Just like before, the final round started off pretty slow, woke up with some wrestling. And just like the second, it was Clark who notched that takedown this time. Knight got up, but it was still Clark got in a dominant position along the fence. Then out of nowhere, absolutely nowhere, Clark landed a bomb of another elbow. I mean, so many elbows tonight. Good God. Elbows all over the place. Huge elbow. Followed it up with some more big strikes. And the ref was forced to step in the third round. Clark wins by TKO. Amazing. The next one, main card. We're on the main card now. Mounir Lazzez, Anj Lusa, which apparently is how you say his name. That's what I noticed on the broadcast. I had Lazzez by decision going into this, just because he's been around the UFC a little bit. He's looked pretty good too. So to me, it made a lot of sense to go with Lazzez, even though Lusa did look, decent going into it, especially after the Contender series. The opening round, dead even striking matchup the whole way through. Both of them were doing well, landing some good shots, but it seemed like Lazzez really took the round thanks to a few extra combos and a little bit of clinch control. The next round opened wild, fast and furious, with some wild action from both sides. Both of the guys were letting loose some huge, pretty crisp, ruthless combos, honestly. The round was pretty close, but thanks to another late clinch and a little bit of boost in activity from Lazzez, I think probably Lazzez was up 2-0 at that point. The final round, just as even, really solidifying this as one of the best of the night. And I actually gave this my fight of the night. The UFC ended up giving it to Wu and Bueno Silva, which I will talk about later, which was also a good fight. But I think this one was just, it was good the whole way through. And it was really the only fight on Saturday, I should say, that had that. The final round, and I mean, really, okay, actually, yeah, never mind. The third round was even closer, but thanks to another late clinch. Oh, whoops, I almost read out the second round again. The final round was just as even. But with a late flurry, he stumbled Lusa. Seemed as though Lazzez scraped by with either a 30-27 or a 29-28. And it sounds one-sided when you say the score is out 30-27. But it really was close, and it really was crazy to watch. So all the judges did agree, though. They all gave it 30-27 to Lazzez for that one. But it was very close. Don't be mistaken. Now, next one going up. Another huge favorite for the night. Sabatini against the Canadian Tj Laramie. I did specifically mention this was going to be a little closer than people were expecting, I would say. But going into it, of course, I had Sabatini because, I mean, originally it was supposed to be Gavin Tucker who was supposed to be fighting, which was weird, actually, because Gavin Tucker was in the building. So that seems a little bit weird. But anyway, supposed to be Gavin Tucker who got the fight. And at that point, that would have been a really close fight, Sabatini and Tucker. But this Laramie got, I don't even know why I said it like that. Laramie got the fight instead. And because of his history in the UFC, being that he lost his debut against Derek Minner pretty quickly in the opening round of his debut, and then hadn't fought since, seemed like Sabatini was the obvious choice here. Everyone knew going into this side. I mean, Sabatini did have a huge advantage on the ground. That was the one pretty obvious thing going into it from Sabatini. So against really all kinds of logic, Laramie was the one who brought the fight to the ground first. Huge mistake. That was his first mistake. Sabatini used this opportunity to get TJ into a bad spot right away. And realizing that he shouldn't be on the ground, Laramie brought the fight back up to the feet. And it was looking like Laramie was going to cruise into the second round until Sabatini slipped up a nasty kick into the body, dropped Laramie to the ground. I mean, some of those body kicks are disgusting sometimes. I mean, I would not want to be hit by any of those. That's the kind of thing that makes you throw up, like for real. It happens quite often. With that much control and striking on the feet, TJ probably did win that first round, though. The second round was really never much in question, though. Never really in question, though, as Sabatini laid into TJ on the ground, sitting on his back, letting loose a bunch of ground and pound for really almost the entire round, and really, I think, earned a 10-8 on the cards there for Sabatini. So it seemed like, I mean, it was either tied or very much in favor of Sabatini with the 10-8 round. The final round, Sabatini got himself on top pretty quick again and did pretty much the same thing as the second round. That honestly could have even been a 10-8 again, but I probably would have leaned on the 10-9 there. Overall, pretty easy, well, not really easy win, but pretty dominant performance from Sabatini. I scored it 29. Yeah, 29-27 for Sabatini. I did not write down what the judges said as scores, but they did very much all have it for Sabatini. And I think they kind of agree. I think most of them did have it 29-27. Next one, Mayra Bueno Silva, Yanan Wu. My dog was making silly sounds. I, like most people, had Bueno Silva going into this. She was a pretty big favorite, but I did say it seemed like it was going to be a closer fight than people thought it was going into this, because Bueno Silva was coming up from flyweight, and she's done pretty well down at flyweight. She's great down there. But when you're coming up against somebody who belongs in bantamweight, who is very much bantamweight size, it's going to be a problem when you're smaller. So that's what I thought. That's what I thought was going to make it close. But because of the skill and maybe in a bit of extra speed, I was saying Bueno Silva was still probably going to take it on the cards. All the activity really was slanted towards Wu for the first minute, but all of that changed. Bueno Silva rocked her with a big one, stumbled her backwards, but Wu being so insanely tough. I mean, it was crazy to watch really what she was going through. Wu had the slightly higher output, but really, I think it was more a question of quality over quantity on this one. I would have said that Mayra probably took it on the cards that round, even though Wu did have the slightly higher output. The second round started off the same, but shifted as Wu got a nice takedown. And really, although Bueno Silva found herself on the ground, she decided not to get up, opting instead to work for submissions from her back, which is what she does well. I mean, she kind of wanted it on the ground anyway, especially when you're a slightly smaller fighter than your counterpart, I should say. Being on the ground as a skilled jiu-jitsu person is probably the way to go. What was I going to say? She threatened Wu with an armbar and a nasty Kimura. I mean, seriously, really, I think everybody kind of thought Wu was going to tap at that point. I mean, her arm was all the way back. Her fist was like all the way back at the neck. I have no idea how she didn't tap to that. Really insane to watch, but she made it through all that. So the fight was probably 1-1, not just because Wu probably won that round, which again sounds crazy because she was almost finished, but you got to remember she did spend all that time on top, in the dominant position. So if you work on the scorecards like that, that round technically goes to Wu, even though she was almost finished. That's just how the scoring works. I hate to say it, folks. I hate to say it. What was I going to say? The final round, dead even, and the judges really could have gone either way. But I hate to say it, I kind of had it scored as 29-28 for Wu. I really did. I personally did. I had it scored for Wu, even though, of course, I wanted the fight to go for Bueno Silva because of the bets that I had. I have to say, I saw it for Wu on this one. But, it was close enough that I could see an argument for either side. So it's not like I'm not going to include this one as the worst card of the month, because it was very close. But in the end, all the judges saw it for Bueno Silva, 29-28. I will say, actually, though, this might end up being on one of the cards, because one of them did have it 30-27, and you'd have to be blind to really give all 3 rounds to Silva, considering the fact that Wu very much won one of those rounds. Anyway, so in spite of what I thought happened in the fight, we did end up cashing in on the bet there that Bueno Silva did win by decision and kept all the parlays alive with that one. The next one, Andre Fialho, Miguel Baeza. And I said going into this how very, very close this was. And I was so close to picking Fialho on this one. I really was. In fact, originally I did pick Fialho, but I changed my mind and went over to Baeza because I was like, I don't know. I was just thinking Baeza just had a little bit extra because of his stamina. That was pretty much the only reason why I ended up switching him, and I thought he was pretty well rounded. But yeah, so I had Baeza by decision going into this. Both men took it pretty slow to start, tried to avoid an early disaster because both of these guys pretty good, pretty strong. The guy who seemed edge ahead early was Baeza with the slightly crisper boxing and the bigger strikes. But just as he started to land more, Baeza got smoked with some big uppercuts in the clinch, and that was it. He went to the ground, tried to recover, but it was no use. He kept getting pummeled by Fialho, and the ref was forced to stop it. TKO win for Fialho in the first round. Like I said, he was doing well early, Baeza, but he got caught in the clinch like that. And that's a rough place to get caught in, because normally that really doesn't normally happen where somebody gets dropped like that in the clinch. So yeah, very impressive win by Fialho. I'm impressed. Got his first win in the UFC, by the way. Amazing. That was also my KO of the night right there. So yeah, I'm a little pissed off though, like I said, that I didn't listen to my gut originally, which was that Fialho had a slight edge going into it because he did so well against Michel Pereira. Because that should have been a dead giveaway right there. But again, it was so close. And even in the fight, it was close. Baeza, like I said, was winning the first part of that fight. Next up, co-main event. We had Caio Borralho, Gadzhi Omar Gadzhiev. I had Borralho by decision going into this. The underdog going into this. Because, and I said this, he had fights at light heavyweight and middleweight. This fight was being fought at middleweight, and he finished somebody at light heavyweight. So, and I knew how well-rounded he was. He's so well-rounded. So, I just figured, because of the skill set, because he won at light heavyweight, I had Borralho winning by decision in this fight. Even though a lot of people said I was wrong and went with Gadzhi. with that, I mean, and it makes sense because again, Gadzhi, I mean, what he was undefeated, right? Yeah, he was undefeated before going into this, had the wrestling background, but I specifically said, when Borralho is that well rounded and he had the extra weight going into it, you gotta give Borralho the credit that he deserved going into it. Um, of course, with that familiar combat sambo wrestling, the same one, of course, that Khabib and Islam have. Pretty obvious way to path to victory for Gadzhi. Although he was the one who initiated the first wrestling exchange, Gadzhi was actually the one who found himself on the bottom after Caio reversed the position on him. And that right there tells you how good Caio actually is and why I picked him in the first place, because he actually reversed a Dagestani wrestler. That's how good he is. And then what was I going to say? And dominated him down there for the over half of the opening round. That's right. Caio Borralho dominated a Dagestani wrestler on the ground, spending the entire, like half of the opening round on top. Amazing. So very clearly won that round 10-9. The second round started off pretty similar. Caio lit him up on the feet until he brought the fight to the ground once again after Gadzhi whiffed on a massive punch. Caio completely just relentless, absolutely relentless, riding Gadzhi's back, threatening submissions all over the place, easily won the second round too. So knowing he lost those two rounds, Gadzhi came in hot, trying to get something going. Sadly, dealt out a groin strike that killed any kind of momentum that he had. After restarting the fight, Caio jumped right back in, threw some wild flying knees, got another couple of takedowns. Things did get questionable though for a second, I will say though, after Gadzhi had a pretty good grip on Caio's leg on the ground. I was like, oh no, after all this dominance from Caio, he's going to get finished by some ridiculous heel hook. But he got out of it, thankfully, regained his dominant position. Sadly, though, for the third time tonight, and I said we were going to talk about this, another illegal strike had to take a point away. The doctor forced to come in, sadly, and they had to stop the fight. And we saw a second technical unanimous decision of the night. And weirdly enough, it was for the person, once again, who dealt out the illegal strike, Caio. But I mean, again, he was so clearly winning the fight before that. So, I mean, it's still a pretty clear win. But of course, he did lose the point on the card. So he ended up winning 29-27 because of that lost point. And I actually don't know if I did write down what the illegal strike was this time. No, I didn't write it. Oh yeah, that's right. It was a knee. I didn't write it down, but I do remember now. It was a knee up against the cage. Gadzhi had his hand down, one hand down on the mat. Technically, that's a downed fighter, but it was like literally like this, like just the fingertips, just the tip on there. And Caio did not see it, so he threw up the knee. I mean, it's so close because that's very similar to what happened with Jan. But Jan, Sterling was literally on his knees at that point. So very different, but it was a knee that did it. So it was pretty similar in that way. But yeah, I mean, he even said he couldn't see it. He would never do that. I believe it too. I mean, you could even see just from his angle because he was like, the other guy was being a tripod basically. Like that. Caio was standing over top of him, so his vision was blocked. He couldn't see where the hand was. It's tough when that happens. I mean, I guess really a more experienced fighter would say, I don't know if he's touching the ground or not, so I won't throw a knee. Or maybe you kind of check really quick, check the angles a little bit, and then throw it. But I mean, again, you're in the middle of a fight. So I totally understand not checking it or being unsure. So I mean, he probably shouldn't have. He just should have not thrown it. But I get where he's coming from, and that to me, a technical unanimous decision makes sense again. And that's where I fall kind of on that issue. It's like if it's reasonable, like actually, you know what? I see it in the same way as crime because it really is a crime taking place. So you got to say, did he beyond a reasonable doubt know that what he was doing was an illegal strike? And in both of the cases tonight, you gotta go with no. That's not a reason. There is a reasonable doubt here. I mean, like I said, Caio couldn't see that his hand was on the mat, so he threw it. That's a reasonable doubt. And of course, the first one, Barnett moved his head and then was elbowed. So again, it's reasonable to think that he was not trying to do that. That's how I fall on it. The final one of the night, my God, we're 46 minutes in. Vicente Luque, Belal Muhammad. I said going into this, and I'm so glad it happened because, well, actually, not really, because I like Luque. But I said going into it, I had Belal by decision, and I don't know why he was being really so discredited. I mean, I kind of do. People don't like him. He's boring. But I said going into it, I mean, he did exactly what he was supposed to do, wrestling. Like he shuts people's offense down. It doesn't matter if you're a power puncher unless you catch him with something that he doesn't see, because he's just going to smother you the entire time, make it very boring, and win the fight like that. And that is exactly what he did. Luque did what he was, supposed to be doing. He came in heavy just as we expected, used relentless forward pressure, really actually for most of the fight. And he was landing a few strikes here and there, but Belal using his movement side to side, back and forth, all over the octagon. Luque just couldn't pin him down and land anything big. He couldn't get any combos going because Belal just wasn't there anymore. He couldn't hit him. And that's really what Belal needed to do. And almost every single round, Belal got the fight to the ground. And most of the time, he could keep him there for the rest of the round. That's what happened in the first round. The second round, same thing. I would say it was 2-0 after 2 with that exact strategy. Luque was doing okay on the feet. And then Belal would sneak in a late takedown, steal the fight away, because Luque didn't really necessarily do anything to flip it around. But the third round, Luque wobbled Belal with a huge shot. But he did recover with some clinch work and some wrestling. But Belal really didn't look good for quite a while there. And he did drag him to the ground once again. But you got to think, because of that knockdown, you probably got to go 2-1 at that point, that Luque won that third round because of that knockdown. The fourth round, Belal got another early takedown. Luque managed to get up, but Belal threw some combos. Pretty clear 3-1 at this point. I mean, dominant round again by Belal. Excuse me. Belal tried to get the final round going the same way, but ended up actually getting in a guillotine after throwing down a takedown attempt. Almost blew it right there, but he didn't. He still managed to get some clinch going along the fence. But yeah, it still seemed like a pretty clear round for Belal. Again, I thought it was a pretty clear 49-46 win. I don't really think any of those rounds were too much in doubt. Two of the judges agreed with me, 49-46, 49-46, and then one of them saw it 48-47. Again, it was close. It was, I guess, close enough that it could have been 48-47. But yeah, all for Belal. Yeah, cashing in again. What was I going to say? Oh, and what's next for these guys? Because this is actually, the only one of 2 ranked fights on the night. As I mentioned last week, there seems to be a pretty clear direction to go with this division, really. Usman, hopefully is going to be facing Edwards. I mean, good God, if that fight gets canceled again, oh my goodness. I feel so bad for Edwards. I really do. I hope it goes on, but it might be canceled. Who knows? Chimaev should face Colby. I think that makes the most sense. And then Burns gets Belal. I stand by that completely. But, what we could see, there's no reason why Belal couldn't actually slip into a backup position in the title fight. I could see that. So if Edwards falls out of it, I could see Belal getting the backup in that fight. Or face Colby himself, because we might actually be treated to Burns versus Chimaev, a number 2, which would be 5 rounds they want to do, which would be amazing. So if that happens, we could even see Belal and Colby. That could happen too. As for Luque, Sean Brady was actually tweeting during the fight saying he was watching. And honestly, I actually think that would be the fight to make, because I mean, we actually saw Luque against really everybody else that we didn't talk about. So Brady actually makes a lot of sense. Plus, Brady is coming up, trying to make his name at the top of the division. Makes a lot of sense to me. Plus, Brady's wrestling. It's another good test for Luque too, because Luque obviously struggled with Belal's wrestling. So can he stand up to Brady's wrestling? I don't know. That's what we'd like to see. And then, of course, the division would shape up a little bit as well. So I think that would make a lot of sense. If not Brady, we could also see Magny try and grab the win here. I mean, we just saw him get a win. Why not bring Magny into it too? That would also be pretty interesting. Our record for the night, 9-1 on the ones that I mentioned last week. And overall, I was actually 12 for 14. So pretty good night on the betting for us. KO of the night, I had Fialho, like I said. You always see KOs from the clinch like that. So that was pretty impressive. Sub of the night, it was the only submission of the night. Rafa Garcia. Brawl of the night, like I said, Lazez and Lusa, because of how back and forth it was. And honestly, there weren't a lot of hugely entertaining fights on the card tonight. So that's the one that I went with. And the most valuable fighter, it took me a while to figure out really the KO, the brawl, and the most valuable fighter. But I settled on Myra Bueno Silva, because, she's changing divisions, went up a class against somebody who is heavier, and somebody who was pretty good. I mean, Wu Yanan was very good, really, this fight. She looked very good, very impressive, had absolutely no quit in her, even though she was getting, lit up sometimes. I mean, she still kept moving forward, kept doing everything. So you got to respect that. Yeah, it's tough to make that kind of move. So, and she also got the win, did pretty well in it. So I gave her the most valuable fighter. My God, it's been 55 minutes already, and we haven't even talked about the card. So we're going to take a short break, and then we'll be back and talk about this week's card, UFC Vegas 52. I will be back right after this.
Allow me to introduce High Stick Vodka, a new way to celebrate victory. Gather around the glass with an award-winning, ultra-premium Canadian-made vodka. You probably won't listen when I say High Stick Vodka has a smooth, hard-hitting taste, or that it's developed in the birthplace of hockey. You won't listen when I say High Stick Vodka is a tribute to the game of hockey, or when I tell you it's distilled 4 times using Canada's purest mountain spring water to provide an authentic, remarkable flavor. But maybe you will listen when I say it comes in a f***ing hockey stick. Showcase your passion for hockey with our limited edition hand-blown hockey stick bottle. Whether you're celebrating victory or drinking to defeat, High Stick Vodka is better after every shot. Visit us at highstickvodka.com. It also comes in this regular bottle. Celebrate victory. Drink responsibly.
And we're we're back with this week's card. It's UFC Vegas 52, Lemos, Andraj. We've got the first fight card since November. That is being headlined by the women. That is almost 6 months. That is crazy that we haven't seen a card that long headlined by the ladies. This time, of course, we'll talk about that later, but we'll go in, skip all the fuss and go right into the main card. That would be Charles Jourdain, Lando Venata. The Canadian Jourdain is back once again. Oh, and actually it was supposed to be 3 Canadians, but there's only 2, and we'll talk about that later. I just need to fix that on here because, yeah, they just changed that today, that Tanner Boser is no longer fighting. Actually, they changed that last night, I think. Anyway, the second of 2 Canadians. What was I going to say? I'm so frazzled by that. Little bit of a weird record for Jourdain so far. 3-3-1 with a split decision draw, a loss, and a split decision draw and a split decision loss thrown in there. That is bizarre, really. I don't even know what to say with that. I doubted, I've doubted his skill in the past a little bit because he's struggled in the past. But after his last fight, Andre Ewell, he impressed everybody so much, including myself, that I said I would never doubt him again. As for Lando Venata, also got a bit of a strange record, 4-5-2. You don't usually see 2 no contests, and then a 4-5 record. Just really weird. He's been here since 2016, and he has fought some decent contenders like Bobby Green, Jacasey, and even Tony Ferguson actually in his debut, but he's never grabbed himself a big win. I think this is pretty much a coin toss really going into this. They've both had their problems in their careers, but and also they both have some skill and they both tend to go in decisions. So I'm seeing a decision here too. But based on the records, based on their strength of competition and how they've looked lately, I would have to say that Jourdain carries a slight edge going into this and should take a close decision. In a very rare turn of events here, I'm actually going with the Canadian. I don't normally go with my fellow Canadians here, but I'm going with them on this time. Oh, Canada. I don't even know where I was going with that. I don't know. But that's the way we're going with it on this one. Bring me the banner for Bet99. Banner, please. Betting. Let's see. We are on the odds. Wow. I don't even know where I'm going with this. I mean, we're an hour deep and I'm already losing it. The odds for this fight on Bet99. Check out that link below if you want an instant match bonus from Bet99. We've got Venata at -105, Jourdain -118 going into this. So it really is a coin toss. Fuck, I hate when I do that. It really is a coin toss going into this. Jourdain has the slight edge according to the bettors. And I agree, the odds makers, I should say, and bettors, I guess, because they're the ones really that determine the odds. They've got the slight edge going for Jourdain. I totally agree. So Jourdain -118, perfect. Take that one. And the over-under on this at 2.5 rounds, -209 for the over going into the decision. I very much agree with that. So -209. Not a bad choice to make here. The next one, Sumudarji, Manel Kopp. My dog's making stupid noise and looking at me. Sumudarji, Manel Kopp going into this one. Ranked flyweights, insane flyweights. I mean, this to me is the most exciting matchup of the night. I cannot wait for this one. This one's going to be so good. Again, though, very close and really could go either way. Sumudarji ranked 12th right now, but very interestingly, does not have any wins over anybody in the top 15 right now. In fact, the only recognizable name in his 3-1 UFC record are Malcolm Gordon and a loss to Louis Smolka. So that's it. I mean, everybody else is like, I didn't even really, well, I knew who they were, but I mean, nobody else would really know who they were. So, I mean, it seems bizarre how he even has a spot in the top 15. Yeah, it's a little bit weird. As for Kopp, blitzed his way into the division with 4 fights in his debut year of 2021. So he just joined us last year, already 4 fights deep in just that year alone. And amazingly, I don't even know why they threw him into this right away, but he started off, came in and lost twice in a row. But you know what? That was to Pantoja, who is the number 4 contender right now, Pantoja. And then he fought Mateus Nicolau, who is number 7th right now. And he lost very close decisions to both of those guys. And he followed that up with 2 wins to Ode Osborne, who is fairly decent himself, and Zhalgas Zhumagulov, who is very good. And he caught Zhumagulov with a pretty big punch to get a TKO finish there after Zhumagulov was looking very good, by the way. So, I mean, he's really fought amazing flyweight contenders here. So I think even though it's very, very close. Oh, by the way, he lost to Nicolau in a split decision. So those obviously really could go either way. So, I mean, he honestly might have even won that fight. You never know. So yeah, based on that, based on his history there, I honestly think that Cap should actually be able to cruise to a decision win. I wouldn't really say fairly easily, but I would say he should definitely go ahead all 3 rounds. Still make a decision, but you know, I think he's definitely going to end up on the right side of it. The odds. Sumudarji plus 150 right now. Manel Kopp minus 184. So it is close, but definitely a slight lean towards Kopp, and I stand by that as well. Definitely going with minus 184 on Kopp here. The over-under, 2.5 rounds. Of course, they're flyweights. They both go to a lot of decisions. Makes a lot of sense. Minus 175 for the over 2.5 rounds. I think that is actually quite the betting line to take advantage of, because even though I do think that Cap is definitely just a little bit of a level above Sumudarji, I don't really see either one of them getting a finish. So minus 175 is very, very good to take advantage of. After that, Macy Barber making her return against Montana De La Rosa. This is a very interesting one in the odds, I gotta say. Just in the matchup alone, I've got to say it's a real coin toss on this one too. I mean, really a lot of ones on this card are very, very close, and you could really lean either way. So we've got a very unusual card on our hands, that's for sure. 2 women really on the edge of the top 15. I mean, Macy Barber is in the top 15 right now, but she lost her last fight. So even though she technically won, you know, we all know that she lost on the cards there, but that the judges somehow gave it to her against all logic. So really, I consider her probably about 16th or 17th and not the actual top 15 that she is right now. And De La Rosa also very much in that 16 to 20 range. So they're both basically on the same level here. That's what's important to remember here. Yeah, what was I going to say here? Blah, 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 blah. She was 8-0 in her MMA career. Macy Barber with wins over Aldrich and Robertson, but then really just hasn't looked the same. She lost a decision to Modafferi and Grasso before really losing a 3rd fight in a row to Miranda Maverick. As for De La Rosa, she's gone 1-1 in her last 3, with a loss to Araujo, a draw to Bueno Silva, who we just talked about, and a win over Ariane Lipski. This is a tight one. It really is. And I can pretty much guarantee we're going to be seeing a decision here. I mean, really. So what do you go with on this one? You either go with Barber, who's only lost to ranked contenders. Keep that in mind. She's only lost to people that have been ranked, but has looked pretty rough in her fights recently. Or do you go with De La Rosa, who has been struggling against grappler, or what was I going to say here? Who has done well recently, but hasn't fought many ranked women. That's the difference. Do you go with the person who's been fighting ranked people, or the person who hasn't been fighting ranked people, who's been looking pretty good? There's one thing that I noticed that may make the slight difference, and that is that Barber has been struggling against grapplers, which is why she ended up losing to Modafferi and essentially lost to Maverick as well, because of the grappling. Since De La Rosa has so many wins on the ground, I have to say that is the difference for me. It's very, very close. Very, very close. And we could very much see Barber get a decision win here. But with the momentum that De La Rosa has, plus the ground skills, I think De La Rosa actually holds the edge here for the decision. Plus, a side note, De La Rosa has a slightly longer reach. So that's another thing, another little tiny little favor factor going in favor of De La Rosa. The odds on this, they do not have an over-under. Actually, they don't have an over-under for the next two fights, which is bizarre. But Bet99 has it at minus 186 for Barber. De La Rosa at plus 150. I mean, you know, like I said, I have De La Rosa on this. And it's that close, again, where you usually tend to go towards the underdog anyway when it's this like razor thin. So I've got to say that De La Rosa is probably the way to go at plus 150. The next one, my God, it is the most... Is it the most one-sided? It is the most one-sided matchup of the night so far, but that actually could change with one that I'll mention in a little bit. It's a funny one, actually. But this one is Alexander Romanov, Chase Sherman. Originally, up until yesterday, actually, which is Tuesday, Tanner Boser was actually the original opponent. And that one was a lot closer, I got to say. I still had it for Romanov, but I got to say Tanner Boser is so good and so quick that he actually had some problems that I could see that Romanov would have had. Even though, again, I still would have gone with Romanov. But with Sherman, it's pretty clearly heavily favoring Romanov on this one. I mean, Romanov just recently joined in the UFC, but he's 4-0, got a huge finish over Jared Vandera in the second round of his last one, 15-0 in his MMA career. And he's looked insane in each of his UFC fights. He's full on suplexing people that weigh over 250 pounds. That is absolutely bananas. And honestly, some of those people probably weighed over 270 pounds when they fought him, and he still threw them over his back. Unbelievable how good this guy is. So, yeah. And as for Sherman, I mean, what do you say? I mean, you know, he grabbed a win in his debut, but then he lost 3 in a row. He lost to Arlovsky, to Porter, and Collier. And I mean, honestly, I mean, if we're being serious here, I think Romanov probably beats Porter and Collier pretty easily, and might even beat Arlovsky, honestly. I mean, there's a pretty good chance that Romanov would beat Arlovsky too. So, I mean, just all around, there's nothing in favor of Sherman going into this, except for the fact that he's a little lighter, so maybe he might be faster. I don't know. But I mean, yeah, the fact that Romanov cuts down to suit 265, so he's obviously heavier. He's got the insane wrestling skills. I mean, it's clearly going to be a Romanov finish, I would say. And if you go to the odds, there's no over-under on this yet, but I would, whatever it is, I would probably go for under, no matter what it is. Even if it's 1.5 rounds, I'm probably going under on this one. And I would go for, if you're even betting on a finish on this one, you could easily see a ground and pound TKO. So that's technically a TKO finish. But you could easily see a submission win on this. So you might even want to be betting on a submission win. The odds minus 1,300. Minus 1,300 for Romanov right now. I mean, you could throw that in a parlay. I don't think it's going to really bring down the odds of the parlay much. So you might even just want to just fuck this one, just forget about it. Or like I said, you would probably want to bet on either an over-under or one of the prop bets like a first round finish. You don't even have to bet on a submission versus a KO, but you could even say first round finish for Romanov. That'll probably bring you some money back a little bit, make it a little bit more interesting because, yeah, you're not making any money whatsoever on a minus 1,300 favorite, especially when they really do deserve to be looking like a minus 1,300 favorite. After that, we've got the co-main. We've finally got another appearance from the legendary Clay Guida. He's coming in against Claudio Puelles. What have we got here? I mean, what do you say about somebody like Guida? He's done some of the most fight. He's really one of the most active fighters in lightweight. And really just in general in the UFC history. So, I mean, yeah. He's gone 3-3 since losing actually to the current champ, Charles Oliveira. A couple weeks ago, we talked about his most recent loss actually to Mark Madsen, which I don't think he lost. And most people did not think he lost either. So yeah, I mean, the judges could have gone either way. It was a split decision. I had it very much for Guida, but whatever, we digress. We let that go now. Since that loss, though, he turned it around with an insane, seriously, absolutely mind-blowing come from behind victory. It got him 2 bonuses from me. That's how insane it was. Win over Santos, where he was almost finished multiple times. I think it was something like 60 unanswered shots in the very first round. It was insane to see, but snagged a submission in the second round. Puelles, much less experienced, 4-1 record in the UFC so far, and his last 2 wins have come over Jordan Levitt and Chris Gritzmacher. So definitely not the same level of competition, but he's still been looking good. And that is why, to me, this is very much a coin toss as well. We've got a lot of those tonight. Like I said, this is another one of those. But there are a couple things that have me leaning towards Guida. He is extremely experienced, unbelievably tough, and has relentless cardio. This guy never, ever stops moving. And we saw in his last fight how tough he was. I think that he's going to match up pretty well against somebody who's slightly newer like Puelles. I do think that he would struggle against somebody who's really skilled and really strong, like a top 15 fighter. Like, I don't think Guida's going to be penetrating the top 15 anytime soon or ever. But I do think that somebody who's slightly newer like Puelles is a great matchup for him. And I do think that he's going to win a very, very close decision. That's what I see. He might even lose the first round because he's going to take a little bit to get started. Puelles is probably going to come in heavy. But I do think that as the fight goes on, the second and third rounds, he's probably going to win those and come ahead in a close decision. That's what I'm seeing here. And that's actually in the co-main. The main event, Amanda Lemos, Jessica Andraj. I mean, this is going to be a good one too, really. Another great women's fight. We haven't really seen actually too many recently that have been good, but this one I'm very excited for because Jessica Andrade is never in a boring fight. This is going to be so good. We've got Amanda Lemos ranked 10th right now. Future Hall of Famer Jessica Andrade, not ranked at in this division anymore, which would be strawweight, I guess. No, strawweight? No, flyweight. flyweight? I don't remember. Anyways, but she is, oh yeah. Yeah, this would be strawweight. She's moving down. But she is ranked number 1 at flyweight. You have to remember that, of course. So we talked about Lemos in December. She won a fight. She won the tight split decision over Angela Hill. Unfortunately for Angela Hill, because that's like her 4th split decision loss, which is insane. But before that, she grabbed 4 wins with 3 first-round finishes, but none of them really over anybody that impressive. And I mean, you compare that to Andraj. What can you say about Andraj, really? I mean, seriously, one of the most experienced and devastating female MMA fighters in UFC history. She's gone 6-4 in her last 10, which does not sound great, but all of those losses are to champs and number 1 contenders. That is it. She lost to Joanna. She lost to Rose, both of those by decisions. And she lost to Weili and Valentina by finish. But again, you're talking about Weili and Valentina. I mean, again, all 4 of those people, absolutely legendary. All 4 of them will definitely be in the Hall of Fame right next to Andraj. So to me, there's a very clear difference here. And I'm a little surprised that the odds are as close as they are. And again, actually, I should also say that other than those 4 losses, she's been finishing pretty much everybody that she fights. That includes, actually, I said that she lost to Rose, but she also finished Rose one of those times. And she also finished Chookagian and Calvillo. And Chookagian is also very well known for being tough. So getting a finish like that, and I remember watching that finish, it was a body kick. Insane. One of the best finishes I've ever seen on the women's side of the UFC. And honestly, probably the best body kick KO I've ever seen. One of them for sure. Giga probably has the other one that would probably notch ahead of it, but very, very good finish. Actually, or what's Chookagian? No, that was the finish I was thinking of. Anyway, so I mean, there really seems to be a trend going on for Andraj here. When she's fighting a champ or someone close to being a champ, she loses, usually in a very, very close fight. But other than that, she tends to usually win quite easily. I think this is one of those other times for sure. I mean, like I said, Lemos ranked 10th, had a very close fight with Angela Hill. I don't think she's going to stand up to Andraj at all here. There's really no indication whatsoever that Lemos has that champion material right now. Maybe in the future, who knows? But yeah. So when you go to a split decision with Angela Hill, though, that to me, that says everything, that Andraj is going to probably walk straight through Lemos on this one. Plus, again, you've got to remember, you're talking about somebody who's a title contender, like serious number 1 title contender, really, in multiple divisions. And not only just the 115 division that we're talking about right now, but a division that is heavier and more skilled at flyweight. Because make no mistake, the flyweights are pretty good and they're big. So they're bigger at least. Actually, no, I would say maybe 115 is more skilled all around, but they're definitely not as big. Anyway, so yeah, plus, you got to also think that, like I said, the only way for Lemos to win this is by decision. And can you honestly believe that she's going to make it through 5 rounds of Jessica Andrade? I don't think so. And then also win 3 of those rounds. I just can't imagine that, because even if she somehow withstands all of the power and skill coming back from Andrade, can she even make it to all 5 rounds? I honestly don't think so. So I'm actually going with Andrade by finish on this one, because like I said, she tends to finish people that aren't in that top 5 kind of conversation, and Lemos just isn't there. So I think we're seeing an Andrade finish. You go to the odds, plus 160 for Lemos, Andraj minus 200. So I think it's very clearly, and I mean minus 200, my God, she's the number one contender at flyweight. And she's going down a division and fighting the number 10 contender at strawweight. That seems bananas to me. Like, that's crazy to me that she's not at least minus 300, minus 400 going into this. So seriously, I mean, very like incredible odds to take advantage of in that minus 200 range right now. So, and then the over under is actually at 3.5 rounds now, because it seems like they really don't think that Lemos is going to be able to make it that entire way. So it's plus 105 with the over 3.5, minus 132 for under 3.5. I mean, I'm not opposed to going with the over on this because it is plus 105. That's decent. And, you're still talking about the women. So, and, maybe Andraj doesn't get a finish here. I mean, she's clearly going to win in a decision. So maybe Lemos is tough enough to not get finished. You could always bank on that. Maybe, at plus 105, that could easily be a betting line to take advantage of. And I probably will. I think I will write that in the article as well for an option to take advantage of there, because 3.5 rounds, and you're talking about straw weights. Straw weights do not tend to get a lot of finishes. So, 3.5 rounds, why not? 4.5 rounds, I probably wouldn't go that way. But 3.5 rounds plus 105, it's worth that little bit of risk, I would say. And we've got a couple of prelims that we will talk about. Only 2 this time. There aren't really too many, honestly, that are that interesting. And especially for people that haven't really seen, don't religiously watch the UFC like I do. You probably don't even really know anybody on the prelims, really. So yeah, we've got Marcin Prachnio and Felipe, I believe, Felipe Lins. That's the first one I want to talk about. Not the most exciting matchup we've got, but it's one of the few prelims with slightly recognizable names, because I had heard about Prachnio a decent amount, and we've heard about Lins a little bit recently. And I mean, you'll see what I mean. Like, I mean, if I set out all the other names in the prelims, you'd probably have no idea who I was talking about. So this, yeah, it says a lot, really, that Prachnio and Lins are the recognizable names on the prelims. And also, it looks like it'll be a fun one to watch. So that's why I'm bringing this one into it. Prachnio's record in the UFC, less than amazing. He's been 2-3 going into this week, but 2 of those wins were in his last 2 bouts. I'm hungry. Have been to Khalil Roundtree and Ike Villanueva, who is also actually fighting on this card. Linz's record has been even worse, sitting at 0-2 so far. That being said, though, those losses were to 2 very impressive contenders. That was to Andrei Arlovsky and Tanner Boser. So, those are 2 good losses to have. That is very much okay. Considering the records, originally it made sense to go with Prachnio, but that is when I realized the potential difference maker for Lins, his heavyweight history, because this is not a heavyweight bout. This is at light heavyweight. So if Lins couldn't stand up to a powerful heavyweight like Boser, because Boser, although he is a smaller heavyweight, he hits very, very hard and has finishes at heavyweight. So you're talking big power there. But he did hold up quite nicely against Andrei Arlovsky. And like I said, lost in a decision. He did not get finished there. Now he's moving down to light heavyweight to fight someone who's like Prachnio, who's got a 2-3 record at light heavyweight against those lighter guys and has a lot of KO losses to people in the light heavyweight division. So, he's already getting knocked out by people who aren't heavyweights. And, and Linz has already proven that he can stand up to people fighting at heavyweight. So I think that is what will make the slight difference here. And of course, because Linz was also dealing out some nice power at heavyweight, I don't think that Prachnio will be able to withstand all of that power coming back at him. And I suspect that we're seeing a finish. So I'm going Linz by finish, which is pretty ballsy considering the the odds on this one. Well, I guess not that crazy, but still. You've got Prachnio at minus 125, Linz at plus 100. So this is my underdog. I guess it's my underdog of the night. I don't know. To be honest, though, I actually have a lot of underdogs that I'm picking. So take that what you will about this card. There's a lot of underdogs getting my picks here. But this is one of them. Linz plus 100. And again, you usually go with the underdogs and close ones. But to me, I don't even think he deserves to be the bottom one on this one. People are just looking at his 0-2 record and thinking, oh, he's 0-2. How good could he be? But you gotta look deeper into it. You gotta realize he was fighting at heavyweight, lost a decision to Arlovsky. That tells you all you need to know right here in this one. And the over-under on this one, over-under 1.5 rounds. The over is at minus 145. The under is at plus 114. Considering the fact that Prachnio has been finished that many times and Linz has the extra heavyweight power, it's not crazy actually to bet on the under 1.5 at plus 114 in this case. I honestly might put some money on that one because that is a fairly good betting line, I would say. And the final one we're going to talk about tonight, thank God, we're an hour and a half deep. At least it was shorter than the last couple ones. We've got Jordan Wright, Marc-Andre Barriault, the second, well, technically he's the first Canadian of the night, but one of two Canadians of the night. And as usual, I will not be siding with the Canadians, sadly. I hate to always do that, but it's true. I mean, we just have terrible luck in the UFC, so I'm just going to keep betting against the Canadians. It works really well. This was in the featured prelim, but they actually moved it around. So this is not the featured prelim anymore. Whoa, I just went like half deaf for a second. What was I going to say? They actually added a fight onto this card today. Today, they added in another card in the featured prelim, and that one is actually not on. There's a ringing in my ear right now. I need to go to the hospital. No. Yeah, it's weird. Bet99 doesn't have it set up yet, of course, because it was a very late edition. Like I said, added this morning, I believe, because I checked this morning just to see. I always check to see if there's any changes, and that one had just been added. So, yeah, clearly Bet99 is not fully updated yet. But yeah, anyway, that aside, Wright. Oh, it's Jordan Wright and Marc-Andre Barriault. Wright is fairly new to the UFC, joining in 2020, earned himself a 2-2 record since having a 10-0 start in MMA. Interestingly, all 14 of those fights have ended in a finish. Every single one of them. So far, he's grabbed an impressive win over Jamie Pickett, which is pretty good, but he's had KO losses to Buckley and Bruno Silva. But you know what? Again, those two are pretty good too. So getting losses there, I mean, it's not great because they're not ranked, but they are very good. So, you can go back and forth on that one, I guess. We talked a little bit about Barriault earlier this year in February, where Chidi and Jokuani actually finished him in 16 seconds flat. And that is why I did not pick him going into that one. Before that unfortunate appearance, though, he was actually riding with a record of 2-3 with one non-compete in the UFC. On paper, I would say this is a pretty close one. Neither one of them has really looked all that impressive in the UFC yet, and were both finished in their last appearances. The difference to me, though, is that Wright has finished in all of his wins, including one over Jamie Pickett, while Barrio hasn't had that level of win yet. So to me, also Wright has a slight reach advantage going into this, which will help in the striking matchup, which is surely what he's going to be trying to do here. So with the finishing power, with the extra reach, plus the slightly better maybe matchups on his record, I'm going with Wright, but it is so very close. Plus, of course, you've got that Canadian curse going on. Oh, and this is actually also another one of those underdogs I was talking about. If you go towards the odds, plus 154 is where it's at for Wright right now. And Barrio is sitting at minus 189. I'm not really sure why, to be honest. So, you go with the underdog when it's that close anyway. But like I said, I think Wright is actually looking pretty good going into this one. So plus 154. Amazing. Another underdog for us tonight. That's what or this weekend. That's what we're going for. And just like the last one we talked about, actually, this is also at plus over under 1.5 rounds. Did I read out? Oh, no, I did not read out. For a second, it was so dead even. I was like, did I read out the wrong one in the last one? But no. It is minus 150 for over 1.5, plus 116 for under 1.5. The difference between this one and the last one is that I could see this going slightly longer into the fight, into the second, maybe even the third round. So I don't think it's crazy to actually expect that it would be at minus 150 for the over. But hey, I mean, Barrio got finished in 16 seconds last time. So if you think something like that could happen again, which it might, maybe, you might even want to throw a couple of small dollars. I don't even know where I was going with that. I'm going insane. On the under, which is at plus 116, under 1.5 rounds, maybe. Why not? Yeah, so that is it. Oh, actually, yeah, of course. We'll talk a little bit about parlays on this one, but honestly, the odds are so bizarre on this one that I don't even know if I have any normal parlays to talk about, because every single matchup on this card is dead even at like within the minus 200 range. Every single one of them, except for two fights that are, one's minus 1200 and one of them is minus 1300, neither of which warrant anything to be put on a parlay. Plus, this is what I wanted to talk about earlier. I think the other guy that's at minus 1200, Barry, I don't know why he's at minus 1200. He's going against Jackson, who is plus 650 right now. But Jackson, although he hasn't technically won, by the way, he did win. He's got a record technically of 0-1. 0-1, and it was in the UFC. It was years ago. But he did technically win over CM Punk, but it was overturned because he tested positive for marijuana, which we all know is bullshit. That's a bullshit way to lose your win. So technically, he's really 1-1 in his MMA career, both of those in the UFC. So that should already tell you that he earned himself a spot in the UFC before, years ago. We were talking like 2016, because of what he was doing outside of the octagon, which was clearly impressive enough that he made his way into the UFC and technically did get a win. Whereas Barry is making his debut and also doesn't have a great record. And we're talking about somebody who's never fought anybody like that at all. So to me, I know it's insane to think this. I know it's insane, but I'm actually going to be putting money on the plus 650 underdog. I'm not even kidding. I will be putting money on the plus 650 underdog, and I will even put that in the article saying why there's really no reason to believe why Jackson can't win this fight. Yeah, that is probably the only time I will ever put money. and recommend to other people to maybe put a couple bucks on a plus 650 underdog. So you're seeing history here, folks. I'm doing it. I'm doing it here. And then we also have one that's at minus 600 for Pedro against Villanueva, who's at plus 400 right now. I honestly wouldn't even put that in a parlay because Pedro hasn't really done much either. And Villanueva doesn't even look that horrible. So to me, like what I'm going to do, by the way, I swear to God, I actually did the math. I inputted everything onto Bet99. And I'm not even kidding right now. Probably nobody's even going to hear this. So I'll just boast about it on Twitter forever if this somehow cashes in. But if you do all of my picks, on Bet99, but you include Villanueva at plus 400 and Jackson at plus 650, you're looking at a $5 bet. A $5 bet gets you $27,000 if it cashes in. Is it likely to happen? No, but I will say I was fairly confident with a decent amount of these picks, plus the two people that are heavily underdogged in this case, Jackson and Villanueva, don't really look that bad. So $5 for $27,000, I'm just saying, might not be a terrible idea. Plus, if you don't even include Villanueva, if you even go with just Jackson, cut out that fight altogether, the Pedro Villanueva one, cut out all that together and just put in Jackson and then all of the favorites that I said, all of the ones that I picked, you're still looking at $5 would still be probably getting you an easy, maybe even $10,000. Like you're still talking about $8,000 or $10,000. So I'm just saying $5 on that. You might lose you're probably going to lose $5. But like I said, this is the only time I've ever seen where a 650 underdog looks halfway decent to actually win the fight. I'm just saying. I'm going to be putting it down, and who knows, we could seriously be looking at a serious $27,000 win here. Maybe, probably not, but I'm going to put it in just in case, because there is no way that after Sunday, like Saturday night, after all this is done, we actually see that he won, but I didn't put the bet in, so I lost all that money. There's no way. I will be putting money on that. Anyway, that's enough for me. Hopefully, oh my God, I hope Jackson wins. I hope Jackson wins at this plus 650 favorite. I mean, we're going to make so much money if that happens. But we'll see. It's a long shot, but we'll see. That's it for me. I'll take the banner down. You can follow me on all the social medias. That's all down below. Actually, yeah, you could even watch this on Twitter now. I'm doing it on my Twitter, as well as, of course, Area 51. I was doing it on Area 51 before, but now I'm also doing it on my Twitter. And, of course, we've also got YouTube, as always. And if you want to watch any other sports or hearing about any other sports, Area 51 has got you covered. I just realized this was crooked for the past hour and 40 minutes. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Maybe we'll be $27,000 richer next week. Who knows? But yeah, we'll see. We've got some good bets going this week. I will see you next time. And of course, we've got the Bet99 message on the next one. You can go follow the link below too, actually, and you can get an instant match bonus over there. Or don't even go there. Just click on the link and check out the website. It leads you right over there too. Check out everything else we have. There's even a written version of basically exactly what I've said today. I will see you next time.